Welcome to a special edition of Sound Off Extra here on the official YouTube channel for the Solomonster Sounds Off podcast. This is your Money in the Bank 2016 review here for Sunday, June 19, 2016. I am the Solomonster, Money in the Bank from the brand new T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Just went off the air a short time ago. Long show. They went overtime here. Didn't go off the air until about 11:15, about the time of a long episode of Raw. And ended with Dean Ambrose cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase, his contract, and becoming the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. Not an ending that I saw coming. I know it was something that, had been debated. People were wondering maybe Ambrose would win and cash in. Would he cash in that night? I thought that, by even bringing that up on Monday Night Raw last week, that all but disqualified that as a possibility, but I guess I was wrong. I didn't think Dean Ambrose was getting the championship at all, whether it was here or at SummerSlam. I made that clear on the podcast, so I'll be the first to admit I was wrong and pleasantly surprised at that. I should have seen it coming, though. What I have talked about is ever since losing to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, they have done an unusual job of keeping Ambrose strong, which was not their forte before. It didn't seem to be a priority before. But he got back-to-back pay-per-view wins over Jericho. He was getting more TV wins lately against Jericho, against Kevin Owens. He was winning a lot, which, again, is very unusual for Dean Ambrose. And he won, again, twice on this show. So this is the strongest they've booked Ambrose maybe since the Shield days. And I'm happy to see it. I'm a Dean Ambrose fan. I'm happy to see him, I say get a run. Let's see. He just won the championship a few minutes ago. Who the hell knows? Watch him drop it tomorrow night. But hopefully he gets a chance to run with it for a little bit, and hopefully tonight is an indication that we have not seen the last of the Shield members in the ring together, because I'd like to see more of that. So let's just run through the card real quick here. First of all, let me just mention the poll that I put up. I'm bringing it up right now. Of course, I have the poll up on Twitter, Money in the Bank, thumbs up, thumbs down. As I look at the poll at the moment, and we're just a few minutes shy of midnight here, well over 700 votes, 83% thumbs up, 17% thumbs down. And I said when I recorded episode 446 earlier today that there was no reason to expect this poll would be anything other than 70-30, 80-20, not because of the undercard, but I said that those top three matches, the Money in the Bank match, the John Cena AJ Styles match, and the championship main event, this was a top-heavy card. Those three matches, I said, if they delivered, this was going to be easily a thumbs-up pay-per-view. And that's exactly what happened. The undercard was completely forgettable. There was not a single match on the undercard that I would say was anything above, good. There was nothing. It was dull. It was lackluster. Corbin and Ziggler, I guess, kind of picked up towards the end. And there was some fun stuff in the tag team match. We'll get to that in a second. But the undercard was just a gigantic yawn until John Cena and AJ Styles came out, and that changed the entire flow, the entire tempo of the show. And the top three matches delivered in spades, so how can you call this anything but a thumbs-up show? So let's run through it here from the pre-show on down. They had the Golden Truth against Breezango, which is such a stupid name. Tyler Breeze and Fandango. I guess the gimmick was that they were sunburned. I was only half paying attention to this while it was going on. Anyway, Golden Truth got the win. Dudleys and Lucha Dragons was the other match. The Lucha Dragons got the win in that one. Not really much to either match. So I don't really have a lot to say about it because there really wasn't much more to it than that. Pay-per-view opened with the Fatal 4-Way for the Tag Team Championship. The New Day, Kaz and Enzo, the Vaudevillains, and Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. The Club, as they are collectively known. This was a weird match because I thought as it went on, I was enjoying it. I thought it was a good match. And then as it approached the end, it's like the bottom fell out. It was very sloppy. It was just very choppy. Guys that seemed to be out of place. There was some awkward moments in here. Big E with that dive through the ropes. My God, and I've commented on this before. And he just keeps doing it in every match, every pay-per-view match. He does that dive through the ropes. This one, it looked like he got his foot caught on the rope. And all of a sudden, he was coming straight down. And I always say it, he's lucky he didn't break his shoulder or separate his shoulder. And it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And hopefully it doesn't, but it's going to happen. And hopefully, if it does, he won't be out for very long. You get a guy that big diving through the ropes and landing on his shoulder. It's inevitable that something bad is going to happen. I just wish he would stop doing that. It was scary. It was scary watching him go through the ropes. So then there was a weird part here where there was a near fall. Carl Anderson was going for the pin. I think it was after the Magic Killer. And Big E gets in the ring, and he grabs Anderson and gets him up in the position for the big ending. And Luke Gallows is in the ring. Now, Gallows is looking at this, and he's not doing anything. He's just standing there. Somebody even tweeted me, oh, he looked more like Festus in there. And I agree. It was like somebody rang the bell. He was back in a catatonic state and didn't know what to do. And it looked like he was waiting for someone. It looked like Colin Cassidy to come in the ring. But to just stand there and not do anything, it just looked weird. His partner is up here for this finishing move. Do something about it. Go after Big E. But he just stood there. And eventually Kaz came in, and I think he gave him a big boot, and they both fell out of the ring. And Big E did hit the big ending. Kofi came off the ropes. Anderson rolled out of the ring, and they pinned Aiden English. And I didn't notice this at first, but many of you tweeted me and said this makes no sense because the announcers were trying to explain, well, English is the legal man. Apparently, according to you guys anyway, Aiden English was not the legal man. And Carl Anderson was. I'm happy Anderson wasn't the one to eat the pinfall, but he probably should have if he was the legal man. So this whole thing was just turned into a clusterfuck at the end. Looking at the match as a whole, I thought it was good. But at the end, it kind of died a death there a little bit. But New Day retains, so they are still the tag team champions. They are approaching the record, which I think they said is 330-something days. London and Kendrick hold the record. I would think they'll probably break the record before they drop the belts. Maybe they'll drop it in Brooklyn. They did mention it was SummerSlam in Brooklyn almost a year ago when they won the tag team belts. So I guess that would be an appropriate place for them to drop them. I still would favor Anderson and Gallows. I don't know who else you put them on. I mean, I guess you could do Kaz and Enzo, but seems a little early for that. But you can't go wrong with them if you want to go in that direction. I think it would make more sense to drop it to heels. Anderson and Gallows could probably use a nice tag team title run, so we'll see what happens. Dolph Ziggler and Baron Corbin, the feud that will never end, although hopefully after tonight it has met its end. It seemed that way, although I wouldn't put it past them to rematch these guys on Raw tomorrow night. This was it was largely a boring match. It did pick up at the end. These guys were busting their ass. Dolph Ziggler at one point, he was trying to kind of run towards Corbin on the outside. He went to jump on top of the ring steps and he slipped. And thankfully Corbin caught him. It looked sloppy, but he caught him and he turned it into I think kind of like a power bomb, almost like a Blue Thunder Bomb, I think, type of move. And the announcers covered for it they drew attention to the fact that Ziggler slipped. But I like that. They kind of turned it into, they made it part of the match. They turned it into something that, Corbin countered it and turned it into a big move. So like I said, I mean, they were busting their ass in there and it picked up a little bit at the end, but it just went way too long. People weren't into it. Corbin won with the end of days, as he should have. And hopefully this is the end of the feud because Dolph Ziggler is a great wrestler, and I'm sure they figured, well, Dolph would be a great opponent for him. He can work all these matches with him, and Dolph's a great wrestler, and he'll make him look good. But it didn't do any favors for Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin doesn't feel like any more of a star now than he did the night after WrestleMania when he showed up. If anything, he almost feels like less of a star. So hopefully they have some plan for him that does not involve Dolph Ziggler. Charlotte and Dana Brooke against Natalya and Becky Lynch. Another very forgettable match. This was just a match. It was no different than a women's TV match you would see. They give them a few minutes. Didn't go very long. Dana Brooke at one point made the save when the babyfaces had the match won. Charlotte ended up hitting natural selection on Natty for the pin. So at least the champion got a win, thank God. And I will give them this. I didn't see this coming. After the match, Natalya is doing what she does best. She's crying. And when Becky Lynch has her back turned, Natalya clobbers her from behind. And this goes back to a spot during the match where Becky Lynch was thrown into Natalya. She didn't hit her on purpose. It was a complete accident. But I guess Natalya is just completely fed up. She snapped. She holds Becky responsible for the loss. She's tired of losing. And so she attacked Becky Lynch. She turned heel. People booed her because people love Becky. So they booed Natty. They didn't like that at all. I like that, though, because Natty is just she's just kind of there. She doesn't have a lot going on. She had her title feud with Charlotte. They've moved on from it. What do you do with her? This, at least, puts a new twist on things. Gives new life to Natty. Now she can feud with Becky. So you have an undercard feud in the women's division. And then you can do Charlotte and whoever she's going to defend the title against on top. It's always good to have multiple programs instead of just the women's championship program. So I'm totally in favor of that. I didn't see it coming. And I think the turn will do wonders for Natty. So on that, I say thumbs up. On the match, not so much. Sheamus and Apollo Crews. This is, again, a match with kind of a member of the old guard, just like Dolph. It's kind of weird to say that. Like, Dolph's a member of the old guard, but he is. He's been around forever. Sheamus has too. And they've been doing the whole new era versus old era thing, and Sheamus is being a bully. And I thought, Crews is awesome. He can do things for a guy his size. I mean, he's not tall, but he's a big guy. He's in great shape, and he can do things in there that you wouldn't expect that he would necessarily be able to do. He's very athletic. He's very gifted in that way. But I still feel like there's something missing with him. The whole smiling thing when he comes out. I've been saying that going back to when he was on NXT. So there's something there that has to be tweaked or added, or an edge that he needs. He didn't really show too much of it here, but he showed, his athleticism. He did a moonsault off the apron at one point onto Sheamus. But I still feel like the match was it was kind of dead. Part of that probably is Sheamus. Nobody really cares. In the end, Crews got the win, which, like I said, he should have, but it was a complete fluke win, and the announcers played it up that way. Sheamus played it up that way. He couldn't believe that he lost. He had this shocked expression on his face. He just, he had hit a move on Crews. He was arguing with the referee. He thought it was a 3 count. Crews kind of hooked him over, got the fluke pin. Crews rolled out of the ring. And it's one of those wins where you kind of ask yourself, did it really do anything for Apollo Crews? Not really. I mean, obviously the feud's going to continue. They're going to have another match, whether it's on Raw or Battleground or whenever. So this is not the last of these two that we're going to see. Hopefully they don't trade wins back and forth. None of this 50-50 bullshit. If they have a second match, Apollo Crews needs to win. If they have a third match, Apollo Crews needs to win. He has to win at some point in dominant fashion. They've got to do something to put this guy over as a threat, to put this guy over as someone not to be trifled with. Right now, he's the guy who got a fluke win over Sheamus. Big deal. So they've got some work to do with him there, and I didn't really think much of the match. But it didn't matter. Really, none of the undercard mattered. It was all about the main events. These were the matches that they focused on the most, and I thought all 3 of them, more so the Cena match and the Money in the Bank match, but I thought all of them delivered. All of them delivered in spades, and that's why this pay-per-view is over 80% thumbs up at this point as I record this. John Cena and AJ Styles was up next. They built this up as a dream match, 15 years in the making. From the moment these two came out, it had that Cena Punk vibe from Money in the Bank 2011. This is the closest match I think that Cena has had since then. And I'll even throw the Rock match in there from WrestleMania. As big of a match as that was, and the crowd was into it and everything, but it didn't. And maybe it was the stadium setting, I don't know. And the rematch certainly didn't have that same unique feeling. But this brought me back to the Cena Punk match from Money in the Bank 5 years ago, which is one of my all-time favorite WWE matches. That was a fantastic match. The crowd was a big part of it, and the crowd was a big part of this too. At the beginning of the match, the first 2-3 minutes straight was just the crowd going nuts, chanting for Cena, chanting for Styles. Both guys had these shit-eating grins on their faces, like they wanted to just start laughing and doing a celebratory lap, like they were proud of themselves. They were happy to see this kind of reaction and engagement from the crowd, and it made for a really fun match. They went out there, they had a great match. AJ Styles tore it up, as he always does when he's in there. Cena was right there with him. And the thing about this match also, interesting, Michael Cole on commentary, and I don't know that he's actually come out and said this before, but this is the first time I've noticed it. At one point, he was told to say that John Cena is the greatest of all time. Just flat out said John Cena is the greatest of all time. And as I said on Twitter, I would imagine that is certainly going to be the narrative in WWE going forward. As Cena becomes the elder statesman, they start pushing other people, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, whoever. John Cena is kind of the, I don't know what the exact title you would give him, the legend emeritus or whatever you want to call him. He's always going to be the face of the company. He's always going to be the real, true top guy, whether he's got the title or not. And he's got, 15 years or whatever it's been now under his belt, or almost 15 years. When all is said and done, is he going to be the greatest of all time? Who knows? Cena could have another 10 years in him. I don't see this guy slowing down anytime soon. I'm sure he's going to break Flair's record at some point. He ain't done. But I thought it would make for an interesting discussion, and I have a feeling I know what a lot of you are going to say. A lot of people on Twitter, when I mentioned that, seemed to be appalled at the idea that John Cena would be regarded as the greatest of all time. Even some people who are big Cena fans said that it's kind of sickening to hear WWE refer to him that way. What do you think? Leave some comments in the section below. That can make, I think, for an interesting discussion. Do you think that John Cena is, or is in the conversation at this point, right now, as the greatest of all time in WWE? I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. I don't believe that's the case. It's a subjective thing. I think it's nutty for them to be calling him that right now, but we'll get a sense of what everybody thinks down below. But anyway, I thought this was an excellent match. I thought everybody was just into the near fall, every move, every near fall, and the story they were telling. The story they were telling was, and this was in the promos before the match, AJ Styles said, "You can't run circles around me. I can run circles around you, but you can't hang with me." And that was the story of the match. There was great storytelling here. It wasn't just moves. It wasn't just, audience chants. It was all of that rolled up into one. AJ Styles, maybe more so than any Cena opponent I've seen in a long time, was frustrating Cena early in the match. And as the match went on, no matter what Cena did, AJ was one step ahead. No matter what moves Cena used, AJ would kick out. And AJ was cocky, and he was taunting him, and he was getting up in his face. So they were telling this story, like, what does Cena have to do to beat this guy? Maybe it's true. Maybe John Cena can't beat AJ Styles. Of course, we know better. We all know how this is going to end when all is said and done. But I like that. I like that a lot. Of course, Cena kicked out of a bunch of moves. He kicked out of the Styles Clash. And Styles kicked out of a bunch of moves. And he got out of the STF. So they went back and forth. There was a ref bump toward the end. Anderson and Gallows came out. The announcers tried to play it up like maybe AJ didn't know. But they did drag AJ on to John Cena after they laid Cena out. I find it hard to believe that Styles would not be aware. Maybe he didn't want them to come out. But he was certainly aware that Anderson and Gallows came out and did some damage. They dragged him on top of Cena. Referee woke up, and he counted the 3. And there were a lot of people on my Twitter timeline very upset. They thought it was a cheap finish, a fuck finish. They were not happy with it. Oh, AJ won, but he didn't really win. I really didn't have a problem with it. I thought they stole the show. You could say the Dean Ambrose moment at the end is what people are going to really remember, and it is. But in terms of matches, I thought this is the match that stole the show, even more so than Money in the Bank. I thought this was the best match on the entire show. I thought it was an outstanding match. And the thing I liked about the finish, yes, it was a cheap finish. I was not shocked by the finish. Nobody should be shocked by the finish. The fact that AJ Styles even got a win is a good thing. I figured he was going to get the win. A lot of people didn't even think he would get a win in this feud. But he's a heel. And very rarely are you going to see the heel get a clean win over John Cena. Now, sometimes it happens. Kevin Owens did last year. He got one. It has happened before. But typically, that's not how this works. So would I have done it this exact way? Would I have gone the cheap route? I wouldn't have done that. But what it does, it opens the door for more matches between these two. There'll be another match, I'm sure, at Battleground. Maybe they'll blow it off at SummerSlam in some kind of a gimmick match. And these two have really great chemistry together based on what we saw tonight, just like Cena and Punk did. And Cena and Punk had some fucking great matches. So I look at this as a positive. We're going to get more John Cena and AJ Styles. Now, on the flip side, that probably means that John Cena is going to get another couple of wins over Styles. I don't know that we're ever going to see AJ beat Cena again. It may never happen again. That's the drawback. But we're not at that point yet. I'm gonna enjoy this for what it was. Great match, and the finish opens it up for more great matches. And the way I look at it, that's a thumbs up. We can worry about next month. Now, this match is not without criticism. I have to mention this, and I have mentioned this before with Cena, just like his punches. There's certain things that just drive me nuts. The spot calling. The spot calling has always been bad in John Cena matches. I don't know if he just doesn't realize it. You would think somebody would say something to him, or he would watch his matches back. Maybe he just doesn't give a shit. His spot calling is horrendous. I can hear every single thing he calls. I can call the moves and visualize them in my head before he even does them because I heard him call it first. And between that and part of this is also the fault of the production team. They have the camera fixed on Cena. There he is. You can see his lips moving, having a whole conversation with AJ Styles. And I'm sorry, when you see so much of that, it's one thing. Look, guys are going to call things in the ring. That's how it works. Here and there, that's fine. John Cena makes a fucking Olympic sport out of it. And I joked on Twitter, I said, gee, I wonder if Bret Hart is going to bury all of this Cena spot calling on his next podcast. Because I know, Bret's a big fan of John Cena, has a lot of respect for him. But I've also heard Bret Hart in other interviews before talk about how that's one of the worst things that you can do. It's unprofessional, is what he said. And I can see where he's coming from. I'm not looking at this as unprofessional. I'm just looking at it as fucking annoying. It takes you out of the match. Nobody else on that roster does it the way that John Cena does it. And you would think that somebody who's been doing this as long as John Cena would know better. It just takes you out of the whole performance. I don't see Roman Reigns doing that. I don't see Seth Rollins doing that. I don't see Randy Orton doing that. Didn't ruin the match for me, but it was driving me nuts. Money in the Bank ladder match, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Cesaro, Alberto Del Rio, Chris Jericho, and Dean Ambrose for the briefcase. This was another excellent match. This was a car crash, as most of these ladder matches are. Not a whole lot of psychology. I mean, the basic story was there. The story is that these guys wanted that contract in the worst way, and they were willing to do whatever it takes to get it. And that includes beating the hell out of their own bodies. And these guys took some sick bumps in this match. Probably not going to be a fun morning for them in a few hours from now as I record this. I have to, just give them kudos. A great effort on their part. They all busted their ass. There was one move in this match that literally made me go, holy shit, as I watched it. And I'm sure it did for a lot of you too. And you probably know what I'm talking about here with Zayn and Owens. At one point, everybody else was down on the outside. These two are going at it in the ring. There's a ladder. The ladder is down on the mat. And Zayn picks up Owens for, I think it was a Michinoku driver. And he drops him on the ladder. Now, the ladder is not laid out flat on the mat. The ladder is kind of on its side. And he slams Owens down, back first, spine first, on that edge of the ladder. And Owens is just kind of laying there, kind of draped, hanging off the ladder. Just absolutely brutal. How he didn't break his back. His spine may need a realignment after that. That was just a sickening spot. So yeah, these guys beat the hell out of each other, and they all hit their moves at different points, and they had the ladders all set up, like the ladder bridge in the ring. I mean, it wasn't unlike a lot of other Money in the Bank matches you've seen. I thought this was one of the more enjoyable ones. Some of you, I noticed online, were disagreeing. Some of you weren't impressed by it. I thought it was a damn good match. And Dean Ambrose ends up grabbing the briefcase and getting the win. And so all of a sudden, people are wondering, what does that mean for the main event? We'll get to that in a second. Rusev and Titus O'Neil. By this point, I was wondering if the match was even going to happen. It was running so late. But there it was, and Titus's kids are at ringside. It's Father's Day. All of a sudden you think, boy, this has the makings of a real feel-good moment here if they want to give Titus kind of a quick one-off title reign. Nope. But they had a long match, and that's kind of what puzzled me, because I thought, okay, either the match is not taking place because it's so late in the show, or if it does, it's going to be a quick squash for Rusev. It was neither of those things. The match did happen, and it was not quick. It was not a squash. I mean, you could say in some ways it was lopsided, because I think Rusev did get most of the offense, but it was fairly competitive. And it went, I don't know what the exact time was. I mean, this probably went every bit of 6 or 7 minutes. Honestly, there was no reason for this match to go more than 2 minutes. Maybe they just wanted to throw Titus a bone because his kids were at ringside. Although his kids got a front row ticket to see their dad tap out in the accolade. So, happy Father's Day. Rusev was great after the match. He grabbed the microphone, he went up over where the kids were, and he was basically, trash talking their dad. His eyes were like bugging out of his head. He had this giant smile on his face. Rusev is fucking great. I've said that numerous times on the podcast. Rusev is awesome. And then we had the main event. We had Roman Reigns. We had Seth Rollins for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. It was a very odd match in this way. We all know that Seth Rollins, the way he has been portrayed on television, aside from that one night he came out and he was bad-mouthing the fans, has largely come across as a babyface. Even some of the things he said during the Big Shield segment, the Ambrose Asylum on Raw last Monday, where he basically said, look, Roman, I have to beat you. He wasn't even really, he wasn't healing it up as much as you would expect. The documentary, the big comeback, the redesign, the rebuild, and even the first night that he came back, people going nuts for him, and you would think to yourself, why is this guy the heel? Why am I supposed to boo this man? And very few people did boo this man. He came out, he got a babyface reaction, Roman got booed out of the building, and that's the way it was for most of the match. And in fact, it felt like Roman was working heel. And I had a few people tweet me and go, I think they're going to do a double turn tonight. And of course, I'm not falling for that. I called for a double turn for the longest time. By now, I've all but given up on it. So I didn't realistically expect a double turn here, but they were kind of almost like trying to make you think that maybe that was the direction they were going to go, and I knew better. They ain't going to fool me. But Roman was working a lot more heel in this match than Rollins was, and in fact, Roman was kicking his ass for most of it. He was taking most of the match. Finally, Rollins started to kind of mount a comeback of his own, and there were a bunch of near falls there. Some Superman punches, and he hit a spear at one point, but the referee was down. Like, all these big moves. And Seth hits a pedigree. Now, this was my favorite spot of the match, and I felt like this should have been the finish. Roman, at one point at the end there, went for a spear. As he came in for the spear, Rollins kind of jumped up and kind of caught Roman's head in position, like between his legs for a spear, and just kind of fell down, or a pedigree, I should say, and fell down. So it's almost like he caught him in midair for a pedigree. It was actually really cool. But Roman kicked out. He hit a second pedigree, and Seth Rollins got the win, the clean pin on Roman Reigns. That shocked the hell out of me. So I was shocked twice in this match. That was the first time. So Rollins gets this big babyface reaction. He's the new champion. He's all emotional. He's got a smile on his face. And then we hear Dean Ambrose's music. And of course the place goes nuts. Ambrose comes out. He does not come out from the aisleway. He ambushes Rollins from behind out of the crowd, hits him with the briefcase, cashes in. So now it's an official championship match. He immediately hits Dirty Deeds, and he pins him. If I had any criticism of this, I personally am not a fan of the cash-ins, where the guy comes in and just immediately hits one move and wins. Most of the time, I'm not really a fan of that. Randy Orton did that with Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam a few years ago. Bryan got pedigreed by Triple H. So he's laying there for a while. Orton didn't even hit a single move, in fact. Now that I think about it, Orton just came in and literally laid on top of him after one pedigree and pinned him. And I remember thinking, man, that's kind of lame. So I'm not the biggest fan of that. But crowd was sure into it. Hit Dirty Deeds, got the pin, and they made history. Because all three members of The Shield now have been WWE champion. All three members of The Shield were WWE champion tonight within a 5-minute time span. And if you would have told me that before the show, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's what happened. The title went from Reigns to Rollins to Ambrose within a 5-minute time span. It's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. And like I said, I didn't see it coming. I just, I look at the way that Ambrose has been booked and in a lot of ways, I used to say this about Tyler Breeze when he was actually doing meaningful things on NXT, and he was on occasion actually in a match that was worth a damn. I would always say, Tyler Breeze, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Every time this guy came close, every time this guy put in a great performance at a takeover main event, he would never win. He would always lose. He would always fall short. And you were always thinking, man, when's this guy going to have his moment? And unfortunately, Tyler Breeze never did get that moment. And judging by the way he's booked on the main roster, he probably will never get that moment. Dean Ambrose, as far as like top guys or near top guys go, he was kind of the same way. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride. The one Shield member to not hold the world title. He came close sometimes, but always fell short. He would lose. It felt like he would lose a lot more than he would win when it came to big matches. And even look at this year. He was one of the final two in the Royal Rumble. People wanted badly for him to win the championship. He fell short. I think it was a triple threat main event, if I'm not mistaken, in February at Fastlane. He lost there. He lost to Brock Lesnar pretty decisively at WrestleMania. And at that point, you think, well, what do you do with this guy? He just loses and he beats Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens is like the one guy that Dean Ambrose always beats. Beat him at the Royal Rumble when they had their, I think it was a last man standing match. But other than that, Ambrose always came out a loser. But then he beat Jericho, and he beat Jericho again. And like I said earlier, he started to mount all these wins, and I noticed it. I didn't put two and two together and think it was leading to a championship win. I'm not even sure if they even had that in mind. Maybe this was something they decided earlier in the day. You know, the way these things work. But he is the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. I say good for him. I say congratulations to Dean Ambrose. Ride this out. Ride this out as long as you can. Because it ain't going to last forever. You know that title's going to end up back around Roman's waist soon enough. But I thought it was a really cool moment. I was happy to be wrong. And we'll see when they do the triple threat match, because I would have to think this is going to lead to a three-way. I would hate to blow it off at like Battleground, because I think it's worthy of a bigger show. At this point, you can't hold off until WrestleMania. SummerSlam, I think, in Brooklyn would be the place to do it. So what do you do then? If you don't do it in July, what do you do at Battleground? Because both guys, Rollins and Reigns, have an argument for why they should get their rematch. You can do a singles match, I guess. You can maybe have another match between Reigns and Roman on Raw to determine the next number one contender. So, see, I don't like that. That I don't think, to me, that's a good idea. But I also would rather they hold off on it until SummerSlam. Maybe build more anticipation for the inevitable three-way. Unless their plan is to just get the belt back on Roman and do a title match with Brock at SummerSlam, which is also a risk if Brock gets hurt and knocked out at this UFC show. There's a lot of questions going forward, but I think at some point we're going to get that three-way, and I think it's going to be an excellent match. I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for a long time to see that match. You thought it might happen at WrestleMania. Obviously, Rollins got hurt. It didn't happen. It opens up some intriguing possibilities. I've been a big fan of the Shield from day one. I've always been a fan of all three. Yeah, I've never hated any of the Shield members. I miss the Shield. I wish they were still together. I wouldn't have broken them up, when they did. But I'm a big fan of all three guys, and it's pretty cool when you look at this so-called new era and you look and say, okay, what real new stars have they created? I'm not saying any of these guys are on the level at this point of a John Cena. Maybe eventually Roman will get there. Maybe Rollins might get there at some point. And he'll start doing movies and media and all this stuff. But taking all that mainstream, media stuff aside, these guys, these are three stars. They've made three big stars. These are the three guys that were protected from day one. It's amazing what happens when you protect guys, when they come in and they don't get beat for months on end. It's amazing to see how that works. They protected these guys at every turn, and they got over. They've largely stayed over. I know the fans have kind of turned on Roman, but it's really cool to see things pay off for all three of them, and Ambrose now can get in on that, because like I said, it was always a bridesmaid, never a bride. Well, guess what? Dean Ambrose, he's a bride. He got the championship. Congratulations. I thought it was a very enjoyable top half of the show. The undercard was completely forgettable, completely dull, and boring. But I can't give this show anything but a thumbs up because of the top three matches. So that's your Money in the Bank review for 2016. You can subscribe to this channel. We have videos that go up like this on a fairly regular basis. There's no set schedule. I will try to do these post-pay-per-view reviews when I can, or when I'm not actually at the show. I'll be at SummerSlam in August, but you can also check out the archives here on the YouTube channel. There's tons of other videos, interviews. We have a lot of those up there as well. You can listen to full episodes of the podcast. They drop on iTunes, on Stitcher Radio, and on the Solomonster.com each and every Sunday. That's full episodes of the Solomonster Sounds Off Wrestling podcast. So until next time, be well, stay safe, have yourselves a good night, and we will see you right back here again for another Sound Of Extra real soon here on YouTube. Take care, guys.